Welcome to the Dropout Multi-Millionaire podcast, hosted by best-selling author and serial entrepreneur Brian Will. Here we go.
Good morning and welcome to the initial episode of the Dropout Multi-Millionaire podcast. This podcast is based on my second book of the same name. That was a Wall Street Journal best-selling book last year. I am your host, Brian Will, and I will be leading you down this journey of success and failure, and hopefully learning from both. In our first episode, we essentially have two goals. The first goal is to talk about, who am I? Why am I qualified to talk to you about these subjects? And honestly, why the hell should you listen? Our second goal is to talk about what this podcast is about. What are we going to talk about? What are our goals? And what can you hope to get out of it? I want to start this episode by talking about the premise of the book and the show. Now, statistics tell us about 500,000 new businesses start every month in America. That's about 6 million a year. That's a lot. They also tell us that about 80% of those businesses will fail in the first 2 to 5 years. That's a staggering failure rate. The IRS continues to tell us that only 42% of all small businesses make a profit in any given year. That means 58% of every businesses out there are losing money. That's amazing. Although it's amazing, it's not really surprising. I have found that most businesses fail for the same reasons. And unfortunately, failure can be somewhat predictable. So you've all heard these numbers, right? We've seen them online, we've read them, we've heard them. So who am I and why does my opinion matter? Well, as I told you, my name is Brian Will. I'm a 57-year-old serial entrepreneur. I live in Atlanta. I'm from Ohio originally. Grew up in a small farm town outside of Columbus. And today I spend a fair amount of my time traveling the world and at my base down on Clearwater Beach. After high school, I served 4 years in the Air National Guard and another 4 years in the Army National Guard. I did 2 services. I did not graduate from college. In fact, I got kicked out of high school, although I did manage to go back and graduate. However, in the last 37 years, I have founded or co-founded a multiple of companies in different industries. Some of those failed and some succeeded. A few succeeded big. I love this quote by Mark Cuban. I was watching a podcast not too long ago, and Mark Cuban was talking. He said, "You only need one to win. You only need one to get everything you want in life. Take as many shots as you need. Fail as many times as necessary. But at the end of the day, you only need one to work to get everything you want." Personally, for me, my very first business at the age of 22 was landscaping. At the time, I couldn't hold a job. We'll talk about that in a minute. And so I decided I needed to start my own business. So not having any skills, I figured anybody can mow grass. So I started a landscaping company, built that company up, franchised it, did pretty well, and then lost everything. A lot of business lessons in that first business loss, and we'll talk about those in the coming weeks and months. But went on from there to start selling insurance, working for an insurance agency in Atlanta, door to door, belly to belly, we called it. Quickly decided I didn't want to work for somebody else and just started my own agency, having no idea what I was doing. But it was the dawn of the internet back then, and I had somehow created the first virtual sales center for health insurance in the country. And we were snapped up by one of the early .coms. We ended up turning that into a technology-based sales engine called Connecture. Eventually went public and then back private. That company did really well. The second company I started was again back in the insurance industry. We were acquired by a company called getinsured.com, and today it is one of the larger state-based exchange carriers in the country. A third company was an internet marketing company called Monetize It, and we were essentially a lead gen company. We sold leads in the subprime credit market and in the insurance market. After that, we started a company called Calibrium, which was technology management and consulting. That one did okay, but we didn't make any money and ended up selling it for basically nothing. And then I got into the restaurant business. Started with 1 restaurant, went to 4, went to 8, 12, sold some, lost some. Today we have 4 operating restaurants and 3 more under construction. I've consulted for companies from small business up to billion-dollar companies and direct-to-consumer sales and management. It's interesting when you sell companies in the venture capital or the private equity world, you suddenly become an industry expert. And here I was as a kid who barely got out of high school, didn't go to college, and I'm considered an industry expert in direct to consumer, working for billion-dollar companies. That was fascinating. And so today I'm a consultant and I'm an investor. Along the way, I wrote a couple books with a third one coming. The first one's called I Give the Dumb Kids Hope. And that's a book about my life story. Here's a kid who grew up in an abusive home, physically, mentally, sexually abused, failed out of high school, didn't go to college, couldn't hold a job except for being a construction labor, and yet went on to found companies worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The second one is about business, the Dropout Multi-Millionaire, and it's really 37 business lessons in how to succeed in business with no money, no education, and no clue. And that's really what our podcast is about. The third book's going to be titled Just Know, one of my favorite words. It's the psychology of sales and negotiation. Just know. Since selling those companies, I became a pilot, a dive master. I've climbed mountains all over the world, jumped out of planes. I did the Alcatraz swim from Alcatraz Island back to San Francisco, ran triathlons for years up to a half Ironman, traveled the world, did some really cool things. So why does any of that matter? Well, it matters because whatever you think you're going through that's holding you back, I have been there and done that. Did you have a tough childhood? Yeah, me too. Sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused, kicked out of high school, kicked out of my home, told I had to leave. That's tough. You have bad credit? Yeah, me too. I remember when the bank sent me a letter telling me they closed my account and they had no interest in doing business with me anymore because I had bounced so many checks that my credit was shot. No money? Yeah, me too. I started with nothing, bootstrapped every single one of those companies. No education? Yeah, me too. Got kicked out of high school, no college, no skills of any kind, ADHD, so very hard to focus on details. Been there, done that. No family or friends to help? Yeah, me too. No idea what you're doing? I can't tell you a single company I started that I had a clue what I was doing. And yet we went out and did it anyway. Have you failed in the past? Man, I've failed more than I've succeeded. As much success as I've had in the restaurant business, I'm 8 for 12. That means 4 of my restaurants failed. Some of those failed in a big way. I've lost hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in failing enterprises. Health problems? Yeah. My daughter at the age of 3 had to have open heart surgery. Try going through that as a parent. The point is, wherever you are in life and business, whatever you think you're going through, that whatever you think is holding you back has literally no bearing on where you can go. Your future is literally a blank slate. It's yours to decide. Some people start at 0. Some people are lucky in life and they get to start at 50. They have all the good background, the right parents, the right education. Some people start at -10. That was me. Doesn't matter where you start. What matters is what you do moving forward. There are very specific things that you need to learn and do if you want to start a business, grow it, be profitable, and maybe one day sell it. And those lessons in business are what this podcast is about. We're going to go through real world stories and examples of success or failure. And here's the deal. No bullshit, no theory, no college professor talking about something they've never actually done. No business or life coach who has never actually succeeded in any business. I can't stand those people. This is real people. My background, the guests I bring on are going to talk about their success and their failure. So if any of this sounds interesting, if you want to get in the game, if you want to start, grow, or scale your business, if you're struggling to figure out what you're doing wrong, then tune in. Between my background and the guests coming up, maybe, just maybe, you're going to learn something you can take back to your business and move it to the next level. So with that, that's it for today. If any of this interests you, come back for episode number 2 of the Dropout Multi-Millionaire podcast. I am your host, Brian Will, and remember, you have to be in the game to win the game.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Dropout Multi-Millionaire. To learn more about how we can help you with your business, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit www.brianwillmedia.com or the Dropout MM on Instagram.